Hello and welcome to Sleepy Historian. Tonight, you'll walk along an ancient spine of stone, stretching across mountains and mist, where time moves slower and stories sleep beneath your feet. The Great Wall of China, not just a wall, but a memory made of earth and breath. Close your eyes, let your shoulders grow heavy, and your thoughts loosen like threads in the wind. You're safe now. You're far from urgency, and what lies ahead is not a lesson, but a journey, so breathe. In the stillness, feel the rhythm of history gently carry you, and let us begin. The morning is soft as silk. When you first see it, a pale ribbon coiling across the hills, half veiled in mist. You have not touched it yet, not stood upon its stones, but already you feel its pull. The Great Wall of China does not announce itself with noise or sharp lines. It emerges slowly from the folds of the land, as if it has grown there, not been built. In this early light, it seems less a wall than a sleeping dragon, winding across green ridges, breathing softly beneath the clouds. You pause, quietly, at a distance. Before the steps, before the climb, before the stories, you simply look. The wall is not waiting for you. It has never stopped moving. The air carries a hush, the kind you only hear in high places. No cars, no market sounds, only the wind and the occasional call of a distant bird. Beneath your feet, the path is damp, padded with moss and small stones. You breathe in, and it smells of earth and cold leaves. Your body feels the shift, slowing, grounding. You are no longer in a city. You are in a memory stretched across a landscape. The wall begins not with a gate or a sign, but with a curve, just a gentle one, as if it is asking you to follow, not demanding it. You take your first step forward. The first stones beneath your hand feel smoother than you expect, worn by weather and centuries of footsteps. They are not grand, not polished, not flawless. They are real. You run your fingers along the seams, where time has pressed moss into mortar and sun has warmed the grit into something quiet. The wall is not trying to impress you. It is only trying to last. And as you walk along its narrow spine, your footsteps settle into its rhythm, a slow, careful pace, like reading out loud in a language you are still learning. The ridgeline falls away on both sides. To your left, soft hills rise and fall like waves held still. To your right, the forest stretches endlessly, trees knotted with history, roots tangled with forgotten names. You imagine the watchers who once stood where you now stand, eyes trained on the distance, bodies wrapped in thick cloth against the mountain wind. They were not always soldiers. Sometimes they were shepherds. Sometimes they were strangers pulled into service, building and guarding a wall whose meaning shifted with each dynasty. You feel their presence here, faint but real, like breath left. In the cold, you climb gently, not for speed, but for presence. Each stone step was shaped by someone, not by machines, but by hands, blistered, strong, aching. Some stones were carved from quarries far away and dragged by human power. Others were made from tamped earth and reeds, now fossilized into form. You think of the builders, not the emperors who ordered the work, but the ones who woke before. Sunrise lifted rock after rock and left their strength in the spine of this land. They are the breath in the mortar. They are why the wall still stands. As the mist thins, more of the wall reveals itself, rising and dipping across the terrain like a whispered thought that refuses to fade. You can't see where it ends. That's the wonder. It doesn't end. Not really. It continues beyond sight, beyond mountains, beyond memory. They say it stretches over 13,000 miles, not in one straight line, but in overlapping segments built over centuries. It is not one wall, but many, a patchwork of purpose. And still, somehow, it feels whole. You stop to rest on a wide, flat section, where the stone has sunken into a shallow basin. The wind brushes your face like an old friend. There is no rush. Here the wall was not made for rushing. It was made to hold space, to catch breath, to see far. You sit and watch the sky change, clouds drifting like forgotten dynasties, shadows chasing across the hills. You wonder how many lives have passed here, how many stories lost and remembered. You imagine love letters hidden beneath bricks, jokes scratched into wet mortar, arguments whispered between shifts. The wall is not just a defense, it is a witness. In the far distance, you see a watchtower rising like a tooth from the ridge square, silent, watching. You'll reach it soon, but for now, you remain here, in this moment. The wall is not asking you to understand it all. It is only asking you to walk with it, gently, to notice the details, the way lichen grows along the north-facing side, the way rain has carved faint rivulets in the steps, the way some stones are redder than others, stained by iron and time. A small bird lands nearby, brown and quick, hopping between cracks. It pays you no mind. This is its wall too. You smile, letting the sound of its wings fill the quiet. In this space, history does not shout. It breathes, it listens, it waits. And you, walking here, become part of it, not as a conqueror or a scholar, but as a dreamer, someone willing to walk slowly enough to hear stone speak. Eventually, you rise again and begin your slow climb toward the watchtower. The wall stretches ahead, not endless, but enduring. It has seen storms and invasions, festivals and famines. It has seen the sun rise on empires and set on forgotten names, and still it holds. Not just because of stone, but because of meaning, because something in us needs to remember to draw lines, not just to divide, but to define where we've been. As the day deepens and the light warms to gold, your steps fall into silence. The wall continues beneath your feet, coiling gently. Into the next bend. You don't need to know exactly where it leads. You only need to keep walking. For ahead, just beyond the curve, it changes shape again, as all things do. This is not one wall, and next you will learn what that truly means. The wind has changed slightly. It carries a drier note now, the scent of dust, as if the stones ahead remember a different sun. You begin walking again, your feet warmed by the rhythm of the previous climb. The watchtower you reach is square and solid, but cracked in places. Its upper corners, worn like parchment edges, turned too often. You step inside, through a narrow doorway, and feel the shift immediately. Cool shade, a hollow hush, and through the open slits in the walls, a view that swallows breath. Hills rise behind you like green waves, but ahead the terrain turns. Pale and sparse, the wall curves forward, but the wall itself changes, that the stones here are different. No longer uniform, no longer smoothed by the same hand. These bricks are coarser, larger in some places, smaller in others. The mortar is packed with different soil. You touch the edge of one section, and it crumbles slightly under your finger, soft with centuries of wind. This part of the wall was built later or earlier, or rebuilt again and again. The truth is layered, and now as you walk, you begin to understand there is no single great wall. There are many walls. Some lie buried, Some stand proud, some curve through desert, some climb icy cliffs. Some were built in haste, others with care, and all of them together became what we now call the wall. You descend slightly, and with each step it feels like you're passing through time. The Ming dynasty's clean grey bricks begin to give way to tamped earth, sun-baked and reddish, like dried clay. This was the older method. Long before modern stonework, walls were packed by hand, layers of mud and straw pressed between wooden frames and left to harden beneath the sky. These sections have been worn by wind and rain, their surfaces now pocked and crumbling like the sides of old mountains. But still they stand, still they hold. A shepherd passes in the valley below, his flock moving like woolen clouds across the dry grass. You wave, and he nods back, then disappears around a slope. You wonder if he too has traced this wall, if his ancestors helped build this stretch, or walked it as border guides. This land has held so many names, and each ruler who came believed they were building something lasting. But even walls shift with power. And so you continue walking through dynasties layered like sediment: Qin, Han, Sui, Jin, Ming, each adding their thread to the fabric. Some sections are barely recognizable now, the wall reduced to a low ridge of packed earth, overtaken by grasses. But look closely, and the alignment remains. The line, the shape, the purpose. It may not stand tall, but it still flows. A farmer might not see it as history, only as the back edge of his field. But the stones beneath his plough, remember, you step over a fragment, a tumbled pile of stones where once a turret may have risen. You notice how different the textures are now. Some walls used local clay, others river stones. In the far west, walls were built in sand, reinforced with reeds and tamarisk branches. In the cold north, stones were hauled across snow to fortify mountain passes. Each region shaped its own wall, and each was shaped, in turn, by the land. The sky grows pale as clouds pass overhead, diffusing the sunlight into soft silver. You pause to rest at a ridge where two different segments of the wall meet, one sharp and even, one rough and ancient. They do not align perfectly. They were built at different times, with different visions, by people who never met. Yet here they touch, here they join, like voices in a song sung centuries apart, now part of the same echo. You trace the top of a brick and notice a mark, a small, barely visible seal. Many of the bricks used during the Ming era were stamped with the names of the officials who oversaw their production. Quality control, accountability, even politics. These marks still whisper their purpose, long after the men who cared for them have disappeared. In another section, you find bricks that bear no mark at all, perhaps rushed or quietly smuggled in during urgent repairs. Even within the wall, there are secrets. The terrain now grows wilder. The path narrows, and dry grasses scrape your legs as you pass. The wall rises only knee-high here, but the base is still wide, still strong. This might have been an early frontier wall, less a barrier, more a suggestion of control. A way to say, here we are. Beyond this, you are other. But the wall never truly sealed off China. It zigzagged, reconnected, opened to trade, to raids. Two stories shared around fire. And this is what surprises you most, how porous it really was. You had imagined it once, like many do, as a single, unbroken shield, a defiant line across the world. But now, walking it, feeling its changes beneath your hands, you understand the wall is not a line. It is a living trace, 1,000 attempts to hold shape in shifting sand. The birds circle above as the light deepens again, and you realize the day is slipping. But still you walk. Each step reveals more, not just about dynasties and armies, but about how humans try to contain the vast, about our hunger for permanence, our fear of forgetting. Some sections were never finished, others collapsed and were rebuilt decades later. One dynasty's wall was another's ruin, yet all of it remains. Because the idea of the wall mattered even when the stone did not. You reach a place where the path splits, one trail leading up toward a ridge where newer towers stand. Another veers down toward a sunken section lost. Among tall grass, you hesitate, then choose the quiet path, the forgotten path. You descend, and the wall fades beside you, low and broken, but still following the land. A fox slips through the bushes, a shadow moves in the trees. Life continues here, even where the wall no longer stands. You pause at a spot where the stones have all but disappeared. Only earth and memory remain. And yet, somehow, you still feel the presence of the wall, not beneath your feet, but around you, in the shape of the land, in the story it carries. You close your eyes and listen, and the wind seems to speak not of one empire, but of many. You open your eyes again and look ahead, where the wall begins to rise once more, changing shape, again, as it always has. Next, you will meet those who built it, not emperors, but hands. You will learn what it meant to carry stone, not for glory, but because someone said this is where the wall must go. And you will feel the ache that shaped this path. The path before you hums with history. But it is not the hum of glory. It is the low, aching hum of labor. As you walk, the stones beneath your feet whisper stories, not of kings, but of hands. You kneel beside one brick, still warm from the day's sun, and place your palm upon it. It feels ordinary, rough at the edges, slightly uneven, yet, in its shape, in its weight, a life is etched. Someone carried this here. Someone bled for it. Someone may have wept quietly behind the line of command. This brick is not a monument. It is a memory. You rise again and begin to move forward, tracing the wall not by its path alone, but by the ghosts of those who made it. The wall was not built in one season, nor by one kind of person. It was assembled over centuries by farmers, called from their fields, by conscripts torn from their homes, by prisoners sent to endure punishment under the open sky. Some volunteered, drawn by the promise of coin or redemption. Others were dragged by decree, their names lost even before their footprints faded. Yet all of them, willingly or not, helped carry time into stone in the distance. You see a formation of low steps leading up a steeper ridge. These steps, like many others, bear the subtle bend of thousands of feet before you. You walk them slowly, and each step feels like a breath. You imagine those who once climbed this same slope, but with baskets on their backs, filled with stone, dirt, or lime. There were no machines, no cranes, only bodies, sweat, and the rhythm of work. The wind carried the clang of tools and the sighs of men. In winter, fingers froze. In summer, the sun scalded their skin. And still, they built. You pass a long stretch of wall where the bricks have begun to lean outward, bowed by time and gravity. Between the cracks, wildflowers bloom, soft yellow and violet, reminders that nature always returns. But once, that gap would have been mended by tired hands, patched before nightfall. The builders could not rest until the wall stood strong. You wonder if they dreamed of home at night, or if the labor became their world entirely, a rhythm that dulled pain and blurred the self. Perhaps some whispered poems into the mortar, songs no one else would hear. The wall, after all, heard everything. A gust of wind brushes dust across your path, and in it you feel the trace of thousands, a river of backs bent forward, shoulders raw beneath rough cloth, hands calloused beyond softness. Some carried not only stone, but loss of family, of land, of choice. Others may have found a strange comfort in the work, the simplicity of purpose, the discipline of stone. Not every story is sorrow, but every story is weight. You stop at a small recess in the wall, a kind of rest nook carved into the inner edge. Perhaps it once held a tool chest or a water vessel. You sit briefly, your fingers tracing the grooves worn into the wall. You imagine a man sitting where you now sit many lifetimes ago, his arms heavy, his lips cracked. Maybe he was just 16, maybe 60, maybe both. There is something timeless in the rhythm of effort, and the wall has recorded it all. Farther on, you reach a rare inscription carved faintly into the stone. The characters are worn but still legible, a name, a date, a place, perhaps a mark of pride or simply proof that someone was here. You run your fingers over the name. It is not your own, and yet you feel connected. This person likely did not expect to be remembered. They may have written in defiance, or hope, or boredom. But now, their whisper remains. The wall rises again here, fortified and wide. You climb the incline carefully, passing a few scattered bricks that have fallen loose, displaced by storms or time. The fallen bricks seem heavier than those still in place, perhaps because they no longer belong to the line. You wonder how many builders never returned home, how many were buried not in tombs but in the wall itself. There are stories whispered through generations of workers who died mid-task, whose bodies were laid beneath the stone, not as punishment but as silence. No records, no names, only stone. Still, some found brotherhood here, camaraderie in shared toil, meals eaten beside fires, jokes told in the dust, the quiet comfort of routine. There are moments of beauty even in hardship, a sunrise over distant peaks, the satisfaction of a wall section completed, the sound of rain on canvas after a long day. The wall is not only sorrow, it is also endurance. It is what remains when the body cannot. You pass another tower, squat and narrow, like a sentinel watching the path of time. Inside, the floor is uneven. Broken pottery litters one corner. Once, this may have been a resting post, a guard's shelter, or even a place to write. You imagine someone with ink and brush, recording supplies, names, hours, a single moment of order in a sea of stone. Maybe they wrote poetry, maybe they fell in love here, maybe they missed someone deeply. You sit on the edge and imagine there, breath fogging the cold air, just like yours. And as you walk again, you begin to understand the wall is not just built from stone. It is built from repetition, from meals rationed, from backs bent low, from voices hoarse with dust. It is built from the slow, steady rhythm of effort, uncelebrated, often unseen. A monument not to victory, but to continuation. Near sunset, the light slants low, casting long shadows across the bricks. The wall glows golden in places, deep red in others. You walk beside it in silence, feeling the heat slip away. You pass a narrow bridge where two wall segments meet, perhaps built decades apart, patched hastily in between. It is uneven, imperfect, and yet it holds. You step across it, feeling that small lurch in your chest, the kind that comes not from danger, but from history brushing against your skin. Ahead, the path bends toward a high ridge where a fire signal tower once stood. You will reach it in the next chapter. But for now, you pause and turn back. The wall stretches behind you, winding, scarred, proud. It was not built by kings alone. It was built by hands, carried on backs, paid for in skin and breath. And still it remains. In the quiet, you wonder what else they built into the mortar. Not just stone, but memory. And as you climb toward the tower that once spoke in smoke, you begin to listen for what silence can still reveal. You begin the slow ascent toward the next high ridge. The slope is steady but steep, and each step brings you closer to the clouds. The wind lifts gently at your back, as if urging you forward, brushing against your neck like the breath of those who once climbed with urgency, with duty. The wall narrows here more path than platform, and the stones are jagged, weathered by centuries of frost and flame. You walk with care. Above you, a watchtower leans into the sky, solitary and waiting. It is not large, not grand, but it stands like a question no one has yet answered. You arrive at its base and look up. The doorway is narrow, just wide enough for a man with a torch. You step inside, and instantly, the wind is muffled. The air feels different, dense, as if stories linger here, unwilling to drift away. The floor beneath you is uneven stone, worn smooth at the center by pacing feet. The ceiling curves gently overhead, and narrow slits in the wall let in streaks of light and sky. You step to one and peer out. The view is endless. To the north, hills layer like folded cloth, and beyond them only haze. To the south, the wall curls back into the land like a ribbon disappearing into memory. And directly below, far beneath your feet, is the path you climbed, now small, now distant. This height was never about grandeur. It was about vision. From here, one could see what approached or what fled. The watchtowers were the wall's eyes, placed at regular intervals, each in line with another. A language was born here, not of words, but of flames and smoke. A single fire at dusk might mean nothing, but two in rhythm or three in quick succession. That meant warning. Riders could be seen days before they arrived. Armies could be tracked not by sound, but by signal. It was a code of urgency burned into sky. You sit on the stone ledge and close your eyes for a moment. You try to imagine the waiting, the quiet of long hours, the cold pressing in from the east, the warmth of a coal brazier huddled beside the wall, the creak of leather boots, the rustle of scrolls. Watchmen lived here, not as warriors always, but as listeners, their ears trained on silence, on the change of wind, on the distant echo of hooves. Some nights, nothing came, no fires, no sound, only stars. And in those moments, the tower must have felt like a cradle of time, suspended between darkness and purpose. You wonder if they ever grew lonely, those watchers, if they named the stars, if they carved poems into stone, if they missed the smell of rice cooking, the voices of children, the nearness of home. There's a place in the corner where a name has been scratched, faint but clear. Not an emperor's name, just a single character. Perhaps it was someone stationed here, or someone who built it. You touch the mark and wonder, did they feel proud, tired, invisible. The wall rarely remembers names, but the stone remembers touch. As you move to the opposite slit in the tower, the wind greets you again, soft, rising. And for a moment, you imagine the smoke. You picture a torch raised high, fire licking the air, signaling the next tower beyond the hill, that tower catching the signal and sending it on. Like breath passed between lungs, the wall spoke. A message could travel hundreds of miles in a single day, faster than horse, faster than drum. Fire moved like thought across these heights. But the signals were only as strong as the watchman, and not all messages were simple. What if an army approached from a new direction? What if there were too many torches to count? What if a signal came at midnight, and the wind blew the flame away before it could be seen? In war, certainty is always fragile, and in silence, the weight of decision grows. You imagine now, just for a breath, what it must have been like to light the first fire, to see it catch, to watch the smoke rise in the dusk air, to know that far ahead others are, watching, waiting for your glow to shape theirs. You are no longer alone, but connected by urgency, by purpose, by flame. And then the long nights, the still ones, when no fire burns and no enemy stirs. You walk to the upper level of the tower, just a few paces higher, but the sky feels closer now. The floorboards creak. Perhaps someone once slept here, wrapped in furs, dreaming of rivers or markets or someone they left behind. You lie back for a moment and stare up at the roof beams. Some are cracked, some hold the stains of long ago's smoke. This place has seen more starlight than any throne room. You breathe deeply, letting the rhythm of the tower slow your thoughts. The wall is not only walked, it is also waited. This is where time paused, where men held breath for the safety of others. Most of their names are gone, their stories too, but their vision, their presence still lingers here. You feel it in the way the light lands on the stone, in the breeze that drifts through the arrow slit like a sigh. You begin your descent, slowly, careful not to rush the silence. Outside, the day has softened. The clouds drift lower, casting long shadows across the wall. You walk again, and the tower behind you fades into distance, becoming part of the line once more. You look ahead, and see more towers, some collapsed, others sharp. Each one a word in a language that once lit the sky. Next, you will walk the path between kingdoms, a border not only of land, but of identity. For the wall has always held more than soldiers. It held questions of who belongs and who does not. But for now, you walk, cradled in the hush of watchers long gone, their voices still flickering in the wind. The wall stretches forward, but now its rhythm changes. The land dips and rises like slow waves, and the silence is deeper here. Not just the hush of distance, but the quiet of something ancient being negotiated beneath your feet. The stones still hold firm, but the purpose behind them begins to flicker like a candle near its end. You are walking along the old frontier, not just of empire, but of thought. One side called this place home, the other called it beyond. And so the wall in this region becomes something else entirely. It is no longer simply a barrier or a signal tower or a road. It becomes a question. Where does one land end and another begin? You move forward with slow, thoughtful steps. On your left, the land is greener, terraced hills, villages in the distance, farm plots stretching toward the horizon. To your right, the earth turns dustier, drier, the mountains sharper, the vegetation sparse. But the difference is not stark. It is soft, like dusk sliding into night. And yet someone, somewhere, once decided, here is the line. Build the wall. You kneel beside a low section where the bricks are spaced wider than before. The mortar is thinner, the effort less ornate. This was built for necessity, not pride. Perhaps it was rebuilt quickly after a raid. Or perhaps it was the first part to rise in a new region. It feels more vulnerable, more human. You rest your hand on it and feel not command, but compromise to the people who lived on either side. This wall meant different things. For those within the empire, it was safety, a shield from the steppe, from unfamiliar riders, from foreign tongues. For those beyond, it was rejection, a scar across the land, saying you do not belong. And yet, trade passed through, ideas passed through, even marriages passed through. The wall was porous, even when its purpose was not. You begin to descend a narrow slope, where the wall dips between two ridges. This low passage was once a gate, a crossing point. The ruins of wooden frames remain, dark and warped with age. You imagine the checkpoint, guards watching, merchants bargaining, travelers explaining, a moment when inside met outside. These were not just borders of territory, they were borders of identity, the idea of China, Zhongguo. The Middle Kingdom was shaped in part by what lay beyond this wall. It was a center made more real by its edge. And those on the other side, the Zhongnu, the Mongols, the Hitans, the Manchus, they were not simply enemies, they were mirrors. In contact, in conflict, in kinship, cultures collided here and blended. Weapons traded hands. Words crossed. Tongues, even silence was shared. You pass a broken marker stone. Its characters are too worn to read, but you imagine what it once said. Perhaps the name of a garrison, perhaps a warning, or a welcome. You sit beside it and listen. The wind here blows from both directions, east and west, past and present. The wall here is not a division. It is a seam. Further along, you see the trace of a smaller path branching off, once used by messengers or border scouts. You follow it briefly, and it leads to an outcropping of rock where someone once stood watch. From here, the view is endless. And you think, perhaps this was never about keeping people out. Perhaps it was about knowing who was coming, about watching the horizon for changes, of weather, of power, of time. You return to the wall and continue walking. The stones feel different now. They carry the tone of diplomacy. The wall may have been ordered by generals, but it was interpreted by families who lived in its shadow. Some farmers crossed it daily to trade. Some border guards fell in love with travelers from the other side. The wall is not made only of fear, it is also made of familiarity. A village once stood beside this section. You can see the faint outlines in the grass, circles of foundation, squares where hearths burned. People lived here with the wall as their backyard. Children must have played in its shade. Chickens must have wandered its base. And at night, someone looked up at the same stars you do now, wondering if the sky looked different on the other side. You pause as twilight begins. The wall ahead rises again into a ridge. You can see faint stone towers silhouetted against the dimming sky. They look like teeth, or spines, or fingers reaching for something remembered. As you climb once more, your thoughts become quieter. The wall, in this place, asks not to be judged, but to be felt. It does not scream its purpose. It hums it. Not defend, but define. Not separate, but name. And as you reach the top of the ridge, The wind carries a sound you cannot place, not quite a bird, not quite a voice. It might be a language long forgotten. It might be your own breath catching. You turn back to look, and the wall behind you bends like a question mark across the land. And now, ahead, it leads you towards something grander, the age when empires rose and fell, trying to claim the line. Next, you will walk through dynasties and discover how every ruler redrew the same boundary with different hands. But for now, you rest where one land once ended and another began, and wonder if they ever truly did. The wind changes slightly now. It carries not just dust, but direction. You feel it on your face as you step into a stretch of the wall where the brick becomes more precise, more deliberate. The pattern is stronger here, tightly laid, sealed with lime and clay, layered with a kind of authority that feels different from the older parts behind you. These bricks speak the language of empire, of ordered ambition, of a government that imagined it could shape time. You have walked through memory already of laborers, of watchers, of border whispers. Now you walk through will. For behind every long stretch of this wall stood a dynasty with its own dreams of permanence, its own fears of collapse, its own fingers clenched into power. Each emperor left a signature here, though not always. In name, you feel it in the way the stone curves, the color of the earth, the choice of tower height. The wall is a historical palimpsest, layer upon layer of rule. The first great hand belonged to Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor. You close your eyes and imagine him not as a man, but as a force, a mind sharp as iron, bent on unifying a fractured land. In the 3rd century BCE, he didn't build the wall from scratch. He ordered the binding of older regional walls, piecing them into a great snake across the northern terrain. He did not build to defend. He built to declare that this was China, that all else was other. You walk a stretch that may carry the ghost of those early foundations. Much of it is gone now, washed away by rain and time. But beneath your feet, perhaps still buried, is tamped earth pounded by ancient tools. It was not made of stone then. It was made of muscle, of forced labor, of punishment. Thousands perished building Qin's wall, their names forgotten, their bodies sometimes buried within the very barrier they built. The first emperor ruled with terror and precision. His wall was not meant to last, but the idea of it did. As you continue walking, the bricks begin to shift again, broader, looser, the line of the wall dipping into valleys, climbing uneven slopes. These are likely remnants from the Han dynasty, when the wall stretched farther than ever before, reaching into the deserts of the west. The Han emperors understood the wall not just as a defense, but as a thread connecting garrisons, signaling posts, and trade routes. It guarded the Silk Road. It protected caravans. It linked cities and outposts like beads on a string. You pass what remains of a Han beacon tower, its edges crumbling, its base sunken. Still, you can almost hear the signals it once sent. Fire at dusk, smoke by dawn, messengers galloping between posts with news from the frontier. The Han wall is a ghost beneath the modern eye, worn by centuries, but it whispered empire in every direction. The sun tilts lower, and the air cools. You enter a stronger section, now tall, wide, with battlements sharp as teeth. This is Ming Dynasty work. It feels different. The stone is uniform, the mortar strong, the watchtowers still proud against the sky. This was the last great push, the wall as monument, as statement, as physical legacy. The Ming rulers, faced with threats from the north, did not rely on memory, they built anew. They rebuilt, reimagined, and extended. And in doing so, they created much of the wall that still stands today. You climb a steep stair of Ming stone, each step a little uneven, as if to slow time. At the top, a tower opens like a chamber. You enter, and the cool air swirls around your ankles. Inside, faint traces of soot clung to the ceiling. The smell of history is thick here, a blend of ash and wind, of stone and silence. This tower was both lookout and barracks, both prison and prayer. You wonder what the Ming soldiers thought of the emperors who built so high. Did they feel pride, stationed in towers that reached the clouds? Or did they ache for the plains below, the warmth of family, the simplicity of fields? Empires ask for loyalty, but they do not always return it. You rest on the tower floor and look out. The wall slithers onward, vanishing into a line of mountains that touch the sky like forgotten thoughts. You feel the pulse of those dynasties. Qin, Han, Ming, each building not just with stone, but with fear. Fear of the other, fear of collapse, fear of time. And yet, it is time that wins in the end. The emperors are gone. The courts are dust. But the wall cracked, weary, resilient, remains. You rise and begin to descend again. The stairs creak. The stones groan beneath your weight, but they hold. Just as they have held generations of walkers, watchers, builders, rulers. The wall has outlived its dynasties. It has become its own truth. As you reach the path below, twilight stains the land in shades of purple and red. You breathe slowly. The wall no longer guards a border. It guards a memory. It is no longer a tool of power. It is a testament to the passing of power ahead. The wall descends into a valley where myths took shape, stories that turned stone into legend, that imagined dragons in brick and gods in mortar. In the next chapter, you will follow the wall not as history, but as story, as belief. But for now you stand beneath the echoes of emperors and listen to the silence they left behind. The wind has softened now, and the air grows still as you follow a gentle bend in the wall. Here, the stones are lichen-covered, some with carvings that time has nearly erased. A character, a swirl, a shape that might have once been a beast. You feel, in this moment, that history begins to exhale and story begins to inhale. You are crossing the invisible threshold between fact and belief, and the wall invites both to walk beside you. This section, long removed from the eyes of tourists and soldiers alike, hums with old breath. The villagers nearby tell of voices in the towers at night, of glowing lanterns that drift along the wall when no one walks it, of the soft roar of dragons curled unseen in the cracks between stones. You listen, and though you do not hear these things, you sense that the silence here is not empty. It is occupied. Legends rise wherever there is effort and loss. The Great Wall, with its centuries of building, breaking, dying, and defending, has become a vessel for them. One tale, older than parchment, speaks of a woman named Meng. Her husband was taken by the emperor to build the wall. When he died there, his bones buried without a name, her grief became uncontainable. She wept beside the wall for days, some say, until the stones collapsed in sorrow, revealing his remains. You picture her now, a slender figure in dark robes, eyes swollen from mourning, standing where you now stand. The wall could not hold back her tears, and so it gave way. Some say it is only a fable, Others say the stones still remember. You continue walking, and the light begins to dim. Sunset here feels closer to magic. The towers seem taller. The bricks glow amber, as if lit from within. And then you notice carvings in the mortar, repeated, careful. Not imperial inscriptions, but quiet etchings. A curled shape, a long body, a serpentine line, dragons. For centuries, people believed dragons slithered beneath the wall, or perhaps shaped it. That the wall was not simply built, but summoned, grown from the earth by sacred creatures who could sense danger long before humans did. In some versions, dragons flew above the wall, invisible except in shadow, protecting the land from chaos. In others, the wall was the spine of a sleeping dragon, its scales made of stone, its breath the mist that hangs in the valleys below. You smile faintly at the thought. A dragon's back beneath your feet. It feels strangely right. The wall does. Not move quickly, but it curves and climbs with the grace of something alive. Perhaps the myth knew more than we thought. A sudden gust of wind passes by. It rustles the grasses at the wall's edge, and the sound is like a low growl, not menacing but ancient. You pause and sit down on a ledge, letting the moment wash. Over you, somewhere far ahead, a raven calls once. The rest is silence again. You think now of other stories, of spectral soldiers who still march their patrols at night, their armor faint, their voices echoing in dreams, of monks who walked the wall chanting blessings with each step, trying to keep the spirit of the stones, pure, of gates that open not with keys, but with songs remembered only by the oldest of elders. These are not stories to prove or disprove. They are stories that rest, folded like cloth in the corners of memory. The wall became more than stone the day the first tale was told. It became a mirror, reflecting what people feared, loved, needed. In times of war, it was strong. In times of peace, it was sacred. It became a line not just on the land, but in the imagination. You continue your walk now, slowly, letting your hand glide along the wall's side. The bricks are cool, but not cold. You pass another faint carving. This one, a figure, arms wide, robes flowing, head bowed. Perhaps a protector, perhaps a spirit, or perhaps just someone, long ago, passing time with a chisel and a dream. The moon begins to rise, pale and wide. It throws soft light across the stones, turning them silver. You walk in the hush between eras, in the lull between one breath and the next. Even the animals are quiet here. Only your footsteps, slow and even, and the faint sigh of wind through a tower's hollow. You wonder, what is the wall guarding now? Not a border, not an empire. Perhaps it guards memory. Perhaps it guards longing. Perhaps it guards the stories that no longer have a voice, but still need a place to rest. Ahead, the wall curves into a deep, forested pass. Darkness thickens there, not with threat, but with mystery. That pass is where the wall begins to crumble again, where nature begins to reclaim what man once made. In the next chapter, you will follow the wall into those forgotten woods, where vines wrap stone and silence deepens into dream. But for now, you remain here among the legends that sleep between the stones. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you swear you hear breathing in the bricks. You move forward with slower steps now, as the wall begins to vanish beneath green. The forest is not sudden. It grows gradually, like sleep arriving first. The shadows stretch longer, then the air dampens, then the light shifts into a cooler hue. You find yourself surrounded by trees that lean in like old listeners, their branches brushing the wall's shoulder as if to say, "It's all right, you've done enough." The stone underfoot is uneven here, no longer maintained, no longer proud. You step over moss, over damp earth that pools where mortar has loosened. Ivy climbs the walls as if reading a script, curling into every crack. The wall, once a statement, now becomes a suggestion. Its edges blur, its purpose fades, and in this fading it becomes something new, not less important, but more tender. You walk beside ferns and saplings, their green, defiant, but gentle. A bird lands on a brick before you, stares without fear, then flits away. You realize this. Part of the wall was not defeated. It was invited to sleep. Nature, slow and sure, has no need for conquest. It reclaims not with armies, but with seasons. Rain soaks into the stone, freeze and thaw, pry it apart. Roots dig in without announcement. Lichen paints what once was polished, and the wall, so long held tense by duty, exhales. Here, the wall is no longer a sword. It is a pillow for the land's head. You sit for a while on a low ledge, damp but welcoming. The forest around you hums softly, insects buzzing, leaves rustling in layered rhythm. You notice how trees have grown in the old sentry paths, how saplings sprout in the gaps where men once patrolled. The wall did not stop them. It now holds them. You touch a vine that clings to the old stone. It is thin, delicate, and yet it holds more permanence than steel. What emperors built to keep out the wilderness has been gently braided by it. The vine feels like forgiveness as you walk again. A fog rolls in, not thick, but quieting. It mutes sound and presses gently against your skin. The towers disappear into it, their shapes fading like old dreams. This is no longer a place for guards or generals. It is a place for forgetting, and in forgetting, for peace. You pass a tower nearly collapsed. Trees grow within it, their trunks pushing out between the walls. Inside, you see remnants of the roof, half-eaten by time. A nest rests in one of the broken beams. You imagine the soldiers who once warmed themselves here, sharing rice and rumors. Now the only warmth is the breath of deer that sleep near its base. This is where you understand. The wall was never truly separate from nature. Even when it stood tall and proud, it was stone and soil, clay and wind. It never fought nature, it danced with it. And now that dance slows, softens, ends. You reach a part where the wall drops suddenly into earth. Erosion has claimed it. The slope collapsed, the bricks tumbled. But in that fall, a pond has formed. Rain collects here, undisturbed. You see your reflection beside the reflection of stone and sky. The wall holds water now, not war. Around the pond, wildflowers bloom, purple, yellow, soft white. No one planted them, and no one tends them. They grow because there is light, because the wall stepped back. You kneel and feel the earth. It is warm, alive. You think of all the hands that once feared this place might fall. All the plans, the orders, the worries about upkeep, repair, preservation. And yet here, in its forgetting, the wall is most eternal, not in form, but in spirit. It lives as part of the mountain again, as a shadow that shelters, not guards. As the fog lifts slightly, you notice that the forest ahead becomes thicker. The wall disappears entirely into the trees. Some say this part was never completed. Others say it was lost. But now, no one needs it. You walk a little farther and reach the edge of a clearing. The wall here is only a low mound beneath the soil, with the faintest trace of bricks pushing up through grass. You stand in silence. The wall is still here, but it is not trying to be. It has let go. You wonder how many things in life must fall before they can return to the earth. How many walls we build around ourselves that must be softened by rain and root before we can walk through them again. The wall was made of fear once. Now it is made of moss. The path ahead bends toward a valley where the wall's memory grows. Thin, not erased, but absorbed. In the next chapter, you will follow the echo, not the structure, and find what remains in the minds of those who live near it, generations later. But for now, stay here in the hush of leaves. Let the forest keep the wall like a story slowly being retold by trees. You descend slowly from the forested ridge, where vines softened stone and birds made their nests in history's ruins. Now the land opens into gentler slopes, and you begin to see the scattered rooftops of a village nestled below. The wall no longer commands the view. It watches from beneath the soil, buried but not forgotten. Like a grandfather who sits in silence at the corner of the room, still shaping the house without needing to speak. As you step into the village, the scent of wood smoke greets you first. Then the clatter of a ladle against a pot, the soft rustle of laundry, the quiet call of chickens roaming between earthen homes. There is no sign here that this was once an edge of empire. No signs, no guards, no banners. And yet you feel the wall in the way the streets are laid, narrow and winding like the wall's own path, and in the way old men pause to look toward the hills, as if remembering something only their bones still know. You speak with a woman tending to a garden. She tells you her grandmother once pointed to the hill above and said, "Your great-grandfather stood watch up there, in the cold." In silence, he said the sky looked heavier at the border. She shrugs gently and returns to her weeding. The memory is not ceremonial. It is folded into life, like dough into bread. In another home, you find a child tracing bricks with his finger in the village wall. Not the Great Wall, but a garden fence built from its fallen pieces. My uncle says they're lucky, he says, because they've seen so many years. You nod. The bricks, though displaced, still carry something ancient. They have become part of kitchens, wells, thresholds. The wall no longer divides, it supports. At dusk, you sit outside a tea house with a group of elders who gather nightly. Their conversation is slow and wide, like the flow of a river. One man tells a story of his father's father who claimed to have seen ghosts walking the wall, not frightening, just tired. Another recounts how his family hid near the wall during a skirmish many decades ago, and how the wall, even crumbling, gave shelter. Someone plays a bamboo flute, and the melody spirals upward into the falling night. You watch lanterns flicker to life along the eaves. Light, like memory, finds its way into corners. These people do not need the wall to stand tall to know it's still with them. It is in the lullabies passed down, in the way a grandmother tells a child not to stray to far past the old ridge, in the tales of dragons told not to impress, but to soothe. The wall remains, not as a monument, but as a feeling. You walk a little farther, to a field where rice paddies reflect the sky like calm mirrors. A farmer tells you the wall once crossed here, and when they dig, they sometimes find broken tiles, worn pieces of iron, and occasionally a coin shaped like a square-holed moon. We place them on our windowsill, she says, so our house remembers who walked before us. You follow a narrow path behind the village, where grass grows between stones worn almost smooth. It was once a patrol route, long before even the elders were born. Now, lovers walk here in the evenings. Children chase each other with sticks. Dogs sleep across its middle. The wall became a memory, and memory became a road. As night deepens, you return to the village square. A small gathering forms around a fire. Someone begins to recite a poem, not from a book, but from heart, about the wind at the edge of empire, about longing, about home. You do not understand every word, but you understand the warmth behind them. You understand that the wall once held back enemies. Now it holds meaning. You lie down beside the fire's warmth, listening to the night. Breathe. The wall is not done. It is simply resting. Through these people, it continues, not as command or defense, but as rhythm, as story, as breath. In the next chapter, you will follow the wall's last, most fragile thread, how it moved from earth into memory, and from memory into myth once more. How it became not what it was, but what we believe it to be. But for now, let the voices around you rise and fall like lullabies. Let the bricks sleep in gardens and footpaths, and let the wall keep dreaming through those who live beside it. You wake beneath a quiet sky, still tasting the smoke of last night's fire on the wind. The village behind you is slow to rise, one window glowing, a kettle beginning to boil, chickens scratching softly near a gate. The wall is not visible here, but you feel it, as you have in every breath since this journey began. And now, it is time to leave the land and follow the wall, where it continues its path, not across the ground, but across time itself. You travel not by foot now, but by memory. The wall's image drifts across history books and classroom maps, across the minds of children in distant lands who draw it in crayons or ask, why would someone build something so long? You step into those questions, into the way the wall survives, because it was never just stone. It was always idea. Centuries after its final tower was built, the wall was photographed from the sky. Satellites traced its winding body, some claiming it could be seen from space, others correcting the myth, but the idea remained. The wall was so vast, so lasting, that it reached even into the stars. In truth, it reached deeper than space. It reached inward into imagination. You picture scholars tracing its route with ink and brush, then with pen and telescope, then with drones that hum over broken bricks and forested curves. Still, they argue over how long it truly is, over where it starts, where it ends. But the wall does not mind being measured. It knows that its true length is not just in kilometers, but in stories carried through centuries, in distant cities. A teacher tells her students about the emperors who built, the workers who fell, the dynasties that carved the land. The children listen, then look up, and imagine walking it, seeing the mountains, feeling the wind. You are one of them now, walking not on stone, but through the soft corridors of collective memory. You find the wall again in films, in paintings, in poetry, sometimes grand, sometimes quiet, a backdrop to adventure, a symbol of division, a relic of endurance. Each version changes slightly, like shadows cast in different seasons, always the same wall, and yet always becoming something else. A reflection of who we are when we need to believe in permanence, in effort, in wonder. In a museum far from China, behind a glass case, a weathered brick from the wall sits with a label beneath it. A child presses her face to the glass, her breath fogs it. She asks her father, "Did they build it in one day?" He laughs softly and begins to explain. And in that moment, the wall lives again, in the space between question and answer. You visit another village, not real, but remembered, and see a grandmother placing tea on a small altar. She whispers a name, and you know it's someone who once stood watch on the wall, long ago. She's not performing history, she's speaking to it. Every act of remembrance becomes a new brick. Every story retold, every myth reimagined, every step taken in curiosity adds another length to the wall's long journey. It does not need mortar now, it needs memory, and still the wall surprises. Scientists discover hidden tunnels beneath, old segments. Explorers find crumbled paths overtaken by sand. New sections are traced through the deserts and steppe, hidden from maps for centuries. The wall is not finished revealing itself. It never will be. You realize now that you, too, are carrying a piece of it. The weight is not heavy. It sits somewhere. In your chest, a quiet, settled thing. Not because you walked it, but because you felt it. Because it breathed with you, spoke to you, unraveled with you. You reach the end of your imagined path, not at a tower, not at a gate, but at a quiet hillside, where nothing marks the wall's presence, except a change in the way the grass grows. You sit and look at the horizon. You understand now that the wall was never just about protection. It was about persistence, about the need to remember that something once stood, with effort, with intention, against forgetting, and now, in this final moment, you feel your breath slow. The wall does not end here. It continues in the stories you will carry, in the quiet strength that builds when people labor together, in the spaces where silence means reverence. So you close your eyes, and in the hush that follows, you hear the wall walking still, not across the land, but through time, through you. And so, the great wall fades into shadow and starlight. You have walked its length in silence, through deserts and forests, through legends and truth. You've heard the whispers in its bricks, the sigh of time in its towers, and the hush of memory rising like mist. Let it rest now as you rest, for the wall still walks, not through mountains, but through you, in breath, in wonder, in dream. Good night, traveler, and thank you for dreaming with the Sleepy Historian.